First of all, I just want to say thank you so much. This is an honor. This is an absolute honor. This is somebody that I've been reading the books for many, many years. I broke my back at 18, so as you can imagine, you came across some of your books and just went to town on them. So I just want to say thank you for the opportunity of having a conversation, my friend.
Well, thanks for that, Alex. You contacted me several weeks ago now, and as I do with anyone who requests a podcast, I say, would you send me a few questions? And the real purpose for that is it shows me the direction of the podcaster, and it also gives my brain some time for some considered thought. But your questions weren't really spiny sorts of issues, and you may have noticed I'm very reluctant to give opinions on the internet or in podcasts where I haven't, shall I say, earned the forum to have the opinion. If I haven't done primary investigations into the topic, then I leave the opinions, public opinions, for people who have. So having said all of that, I then went to your website and I discovered your poetry. And I had to stop several times and just think. So the soul that you have, sir, that was the deciding factor, to tell you the truth, to agree to do this and get to know you a little bit better.
Thank
So
you
there's
so
a preamble, and how about this? It's an honor for me too.
Oh, thank you so much. This is yeah.
I'm,
Let's not go down that rabbit hole. I'll start crying.
yeah, I'm with a real poet. So there you go.
Yeah, it's definitely been a strange caveat to fitness. Um, discovered this thing called weights, and then it tries to crush you at a young age. You're like, oh, okay, cool. I feel a little bit better upstairs, and the positive is I can look after my mom a little bit better and also get better at sports from just weight training. You're like, oh, okay, cool. And you just life but throws you on whatever path it does, right? And you end up again just falling into, if I just continue to move around and shift resistance, I will feel better. And that's what kind of shoved me on this whole path. And like I said, 18, yeah, that kind of got stripped away for a while. So I was like, well, what else do I do? Who else am I? Real kind of existential type crisis. How can I be a lifter if I can't lift weights?
Yeah. Well, Alex, in the stage of my life now, I see patients a couple of days a week, and the people I see uh, are extremely unique and special. I mean, these people they run countries,
Wow.
they're super athletes, or they're extremely wealthy people, or they're royalty, or there's something uh, very unique about them. And I can tell you, we're all hurting inside, every single one of us. And when you see these people who are, headline makers, they're just the same as you and I at the core. Anyway, I don't know if that's certainly been a realization.
I couldn't agree more with you, and that's something that like a while back I referenced this question that I had on this thing, this talking to strangers on the internet thing that we call a podcast. This weird kind of no holes barred radio. And I got a question of like, what's the biggest thing I've learned from it? And it kind of sat me back for a while, and I thought about it, and I was like, to be honest with you, people have more similarities than they do differences. That's the biggest thing that I've learned. And it really doesn't matter the four corners of the world where you're from. It doesn't really matter about the journey that you took to get to the place that you're standing in today. It's, you know what, those questions that we ask ourselves in the morning, deep at night, the ones that keep us up at night, and we're all trying to do very similar stuff. We're all trying to get by. We're all trying to look after the person next to us. We're all very similar, and it's a beautiful thing. It's something that I try and remind myself of quite regularly.
Yeah, when someone comes here from another culture, I'll ask them to well, tell me a joke that would be typical of your culture. And at the end of the day, their jokes
Yeah.
are not peculiar to them. They're universal. I had a Chinese fella here not too long ago, and I said, "Well, tell me a typical Chinese joke." And he says, "Thinks for a minute." He says, "Okay." He says, "There's these two old gentlemen sitting on the park bench. One looks over at the other, and who's the boss of your family?" And the other fella replies, he says, "Oh, well, I am." And the other fella responds back and says, "Well, how'd you know?" And he says, "My wife told me." Every married person in the world
Yeah.
and you know what I mean. It's I was in a taxi cab in New York City a little while ago, and there was a fella from some country in Africa. I forget what it was, but he was telling me a story. And really, at the end of the day, he just drives the cab so he can look after his wife and kids. And he says, "I just want to go home and, you know, have something nice to eat, kiss my wife, and put my kids to bed." And he says, "That's it." And I said, "Yeah, well, that's every man on the planet."
That's all we need.
Yeah,
That really is all we need. I think we
there
get
might be
bogged down with
a poem there or two.
yeah, maybe I gotta go outside and stare at the ocean or something for a while. See
Yeah,
what comes
I
out.
discovered I'm going through my ancestry a little bit now, and it would have been a cousin of my grandfather. I ended up with one of his books of poems, and
Wow.
it's just so much fun to go back to the early 1900s. And again, the poems are as fitting now as they were then. Anyway, we're not talking about backs and things I actually know something about.
Well, you certainly know things about that. That's for damn sure. That's where I was first introduced to active rigidity, right? Rather than just being stiff all the time and you can't move. I was like, no, we need to be able to move, but then also create that rigidity as well. And if we want to put X amount of kilos or pounds on our backs, sit down, stand up with it, or bring it up from the floor, then it's probably wise that we're going to be hard, and it's a caveat to that. Coaching now, it's usually with a bench press, but it applies to the other SBD, so the back squat, the deadlift as well. I was like, guys, the goal is to brace, is to make you as hard as possible. They kind of look at me and like cross-eyed. I was like, okay, let's think about it literally. That's a hard object, pointing to the barbell. They're like, yeah. And I'm like, so's the floor. They're like, yeah. I'm like, it's called soft tissue for a reason. You're soft. I was like, is it wise to put a soft object in between two hard ones? They kind of look at me for a second and go, probably not. And I was like, cool. How about you try and make you as hard as possible? They're like, oh, okay. That sounds about right. It's like, yes, try it. If you just catapult yourself down into the bottom of the squat or just drop the barbell onto your chest, it's going to hurt. Now try and create as much rigidity as you can whilst moving through the correct biomechanics and yada yada. And I was like, oh, okay, you feel a lot better. Like, bingo.
Yeah, it's always interesting to watch the lights come on in people. I'll often explain it with two examples. One is when a muscle contracts, it creates force. Well, they all knew that, but it also creates stiffness. And when you maximally contract a muscle and feel the force, you can't move it because it becomes very stiff. And that's the magic of high performance movement. If you have to move quickly, you need a muscle pulse, and then you have to relax and let the velocity build. And then if you're going to, hit an opponent, or hit a tennis ball, or even run, you have to create that instantaneous pulse of stiffness so you don't collapse into the floor. And then that leads us to a discussion of this linkage that we live in, and how, in order to create distal athleticism, if I wanted to wiggle my finger very quickly, I had to stiffen my wrist. Otherwise, I couldn't create the pulse reversals very quickly. If I want to create arm push or a throw or something of that nature, I had to stiffen my core, which is my torso, to enable the distal expression. And once those two principles are understood, and we do some demonstrations of movement, and everything comes together for them, and then they start to realize, aha, I need what I need now. I understand, if I am going to pull a bar from the floor, why you take all the slack out of the system, and then strategically unleash some joints to create the motion. Hopefully it's the hips, number one, but the stiffness has to be maintained at the weaker joints. Otherwise, you just will collapse the linkage. And under load, that's not a good thing. A stress riser will form and an injury will occur.
I mean, anyone who's got a little banged up will say, yeah, that's probably not wise to do, right?
Yeah. There's, speaking of getting banged up, I did a podcast a couple of days ago, actually, and I was using a boxing example where that strategic control over the linkage to maximally create a forceful punch. And I use the example of Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, and Joe Frazier, and how they all achieved exactly the same thing, an incredibly hard punch, but through quite different strategies, working through the linkage and this idea of strategic stiffness, strategic mobility. And we learned that over the years by measuring the different strategies in these people, and how there's many, many ways to do it. But usually at the end of the day, for a specific body type, there's only one optimal way. Anyway, I don't know why we went there, but I did. So there you go.
I always find it, like, you go wherever you want. This is just a conversation, right? But I always find it fascinating how you get nerds like us that kind of geek out about things and want to understand why. Well, usually when it comes to human movement and performance and health, and like, why does this happen? What's the optimal? And well, I would have to have conversations with the likes of yourself, because I teach adult PE, and usually labs is not my forte. So then it's just this interaction between like coach and scientist of, we gotta figure this out. And then you have the athlete, right? And we've all met those athletes that they just kind of look at you and be like, I just do it, coach. You're like, yeah, but how? I'm watching this body move in front of me, and you're like, well, to the eye and to the textbook, it kind of doesn't match up here, but it's still working. And then I ask you a question, they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. I just pick up the ball and throw, or I just pick up the barbell and lift it. And you're like, oh, okay, what's going on? And it makes you question whether we are built differently, whether someone's just got that wiring mentally before other people have.
Well, they absolutely do. I'm convinced of that. Two opinions on that came to mind as you were speaking. First of all, it's very sport and culture specific. If you take an athlete from the world of mixed martial arts, for example, because it's rooted in traditional martial arts, the way they learn and have been coached, they're usually very good at explaining what it is they're trying to do. to get the arm bar, I'm going to dig your liver reflex, bring your elbow down, wait for you to exhale, and then snap it. In other words, they are optimizing their knowledge of the system and expressing it because they've trained it over and over again. Away you go. And then you might get someone, well, I'll pick a sport like professional basketball, the NBA. I'll say to a player who is a fantastic, well-known dunk artist, they can take off from 1 foot at the top of the key, fly through the air, and dunk the basketball. How do you do that? I don't know. I just woke up in the 10th grade and I could do it. And and so that's they don't really think about it. But the problem with that is if it's not a natural gift, they don't really know how to break it down and coach the various components of creating the stiff linkage, how to create the pulse with the glutes, how to propel a stone rather than push rope. So say they're in their 10th year in the NBA, their knees are getting a bit sore, they're losing their fitness slightly. Now they're getting back pain, and they don't realize that working on that gluteal pulse, that neural speed that they once had, is now being lost. So that becomes a training target, and a little bit more core stiffness, strategic core stiffness at the time of the pulse will help them to recover their ability to dunk the ball and fly with a little less pain. But do you want to hear the other little thought that was going through my brain?
I'd love to.
I've just described 2 pulsing athletes, and you used the word, I found it interesting, you said they're wired a bit differently, and I think you hit the nail on the head. When you coach a endurance athlete, don't you notice that they are, you have longer periods of time where you have their attention? They can listen to these explanations. If you get a athlete who's very explosive, they have attention deficit disorder. That's the pairing of how they're wired. They're binging off the walls. That's how they are so explosive. And you have 20 seconds to make your point as a coach. And then their mind is wandering on to the next thing. And these are things that you learn working with different elites. They all are wired a bit differently. They all have these athletic gifts, but they all, I hear some of these coaches saying, oh, well, you have to give them external cues or internal cues. And the next coach uses verbal cues. Well, wait a second. When you work with a variety of elite athletes, you'll learn how differently they are wired, how that forms a pattern with their personality and their learning style. And the great coaches have to realize you will use any kind of cue you can over a very specific period of time, because that's what matches the learning style of that individual.
Like which cue do you use, coach? The one that works.
Exactly.
It might not be the prettiest. It might not even be politically correct at times. But but if it works, this is I'm Northern, mate. Like I'm from Manchester, blue collar, and for some ungodly reason, I've had the privilege of going around gyms for a while now, and some of the cues kind of turn some heads, and I'm like, try it, see if it works, and it works. I'm like, right, well, don't question the words that just came out of my mouth. Question whether it was, question its efficacy. It worked. People got it. Let it go.
My grandfather, as a young man, left Ireland, and he stowed away on a boat in Cork Harbor, him and his brother. And they thought they were going to New York City. That was where they thought the boat was going. The damn boat turned left and went to Liverpool.
Oh.
So my granddad ended up in Liverpool, so my mother was raised in Liverpool. I know a little bit about what you're talking about.
Oh man, the Scousers. That's a highway to hell right there. Poor bugger. Turned up in Liverpool. I'll tell you what, he would have developed a little hearty sense of humor and a chip on the shoulder from that. That's for damn sure.
Yeah.
Some good folk over there, mate. We love to hate each other. Football, music, we're always at each other's throats, but at the end of the day, it's all love. They're still
Yeah.
northern people.
Did you like the Game of Thrones?
Loved it.
Yeah, me too. I thought there was some real interesting parallels with the Wall, north of the Wall, south of the Wall.
It's funny you say that, like being down in New Zealand, and I've been here for 4 years. Um, they're like, "Oh yeah, where you from? You're British, right?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, technically, but there's a lot of disparity within people there." So I'm like, "Have you seen Game of Thrones?" Most people are a yes. I'm like, "Yeah, I'm north of the wall." They're like, "Oh, okay." You're like,
Yeah.
sweet. That's all you got to think about.
Yeah.
Bit of a wildling folk. Well, why why was this art form the one of your choosing?
Could you repeat that? Sorry.
Why was this art form the one of your choosing?
I, do you mean my career as
Yeah.
a professor in spine biomechanics?
Mm.
Alex, it was pure dumb luck and pure fate. There are groups occasionally now, and they will say, "Oh, professor, would you come and give us a talk about career direction and whatnot?" And I said, "No, please don't choose me because I'm the world's worst example."
Understood.
It was just happenstance and luck and finding mentors at the right time. Uh, when I was in high school, there was a parent teacher night, and my dad came, and the career counselor said to him, they said, "Well, McGill, he's not really suited academically. He should take up a trade." And anyway, uh, it was actually the football coach who dissuaded me the other way. So that it could have gone many different ways throughout my life. But to make a long story short, I ended up doing my PhD with my mentor, Bob Norman, at the University of Waterloo. And he was just starting investigations into the spine. So that became my PhD. And then I was hired as a professor. When I started, I only had one question, really, and it was just, how does the spine work? People would say, "Well, why did you choose the spine? Why couldn't you choose a knee? It's so much easier." And I chose the spine because no one else was.
Mm.
and that's not really fair. It was what I was just, as luck would have it, I did my PhD in this lab. So the other part of it, I think, is just personality. It doesn't matter what I do. I try and master it a little bit, and that was the story of my career. And I, after 30 years of doing it, uh, I started. Well, what year would that have been? 1986. Computers really weren't invented yet. We certainly didn't have any personal computers.
Mm.
So we just did everything as you did in the day. Over those 30 years, I became a computer operator. And you think of how many aspects of laboratory work, clinical work, even students wanting to come for office hours. "Oh, sir, could we do it over the computer? On Zoom or something." Well, Zoom wasn't invented yet, but various chat forums. And I said, "Well, no, I can't teach you like that. We have to get in person and work these things through with physical examples and whatnot." But anyway, I hated the job in that I had to sit at a computer all day. My health was declining, and I just realized I just walked away, Alex. I closed my office door. I said to the grad students, "Come and get my books and papers and whatnot." And my colleagues went through by that time I had two laboratories and the research clinic, and they just came and took all the stuff for their own use, and I'm glad for that. I didn't bring anything with me. I never thought anyone would ever be interested in me again because I wasn't producing new science. And I thought, oh, well, I'll go and build some boats and become a better welder and things like that. So there you go. It's a little bit of attitude uh, and interest. And I don't like being average. There's no fun in doing that. And so now I see patients a couple of days a week, and the other 5 days a week, I'm a construction worker for my wife.
Just follow the boss, 100%.
Yeah, and I'm really just having a ball.
I love the way you describe that, rather than, oh, this was a set path that I knew I wanted to do since I was 5 years old, and I climbed the ladder of, education, academia, corporate, whatever it was, right? And you're like, no, it's you found something, you were curious enough to ask yourself questions about it, and stubborn enough to stick with it when you couldn't find the answer, and you just kind of dove into this art form. I think what people do, and what people are, and how we interact with the world. I think it is just like an artist and a canvas, just trying to figure this thing out, interacting with the art form of their choosing, right? And I kind of subscribe to the school of thought of the answers are all around. We just have to ask the right question. Um, so I love the way you describe that. It's something that I relate to quite heavily. Of, oh, this isn't just a set path. All I got to do is go from step one to step two. I was like, no. Like, you kind of got to find something. It's a overturned jigsaw piece, and you realize, oh, this jigsaw is actually built upon five different jigsaws, and we're missing a load of pieces. And it's like, yeah, you've just got to go all in. You've just got to figure it out.
Yeah, it's an interesting way you describe that. That's exactly how I would choose my graduate students. So, I'd look through the applications every year, and I learned that if I couldn't meet them, I shouldn't take them. And what I did, I'm just going to get that. My computer just went to sleep in front of me, so I'm getting a blue light there. Well, that's a bit better. I didn't choose the students who came in with 90 some odd percent on their applications and their undergraduate work. Usually those students were very unidimensional, and what I was looking for was someone who was presented with a problem, and they had the tenacity to solve it, jump over it, bash it down, and go through it, and not give up. And that was I think I had some fabulous, almost 40 graduate students over the years, but that's how I chose them, and so many of them went on to become very well known in their own right.
So I got three questions. All right, brother. What are the three words? No, sorry. What is the greatest piece of life advice you've ever received?
Well, that's so context specific, because sometimes I'd get some advice and it wouldn't mean diddly damn to me now. But have you heard of the Chinese farmer's parable?
Yeah,
Okay, can I repeat that now?
of course you can.
Okay, because well, there's this old Chinese farmer gentleman, and his friend asks him, well, how have things been? And the farmer says, oh, well, my horse ran away. And the friend says, oh, well, that's terrible. And the farmer says, well, could be good, could be bad. And then the farmer says, well, the horse came home again, and it brought another horse with it. And the friend says, well, that's wonderful. You have two horses now. And the farmer says, well, it could be good, could be bad. I got another mouth to feed and whatnot. And then the farmer says, but my son was riding that new horse. He fell off and broke his leg, fractured his pelvis. He's in bed. Oh, that's terrible. That happened to your son. And the farmer says, well, it could be good, could be bad. Then their canton goes to war, and the military comes by looking for recruits. And they see the farmer's son laying in bed, and they dismiss him. He's not going to get recruited to go off to war. And anyway, the story goes on and on about could be good and could be bad. So that's my answer to the best advice. It could be good, it could be bad. It's context specific. And it's not advice that I've ever received. It's more sort of a biblical thought, I suppose, and just living for a number of years now. Try, and I don't always succeed, but live by the golden rule. There's the best advice that's come from somewhere.
I like that a
Just from
lot.
observing life.
Observing life. What about the worst? These are always quite entertaining.
Well, yeah, I could repeat another story like the parable, but I could answer. Remember that jobs career counselor who told my dad I should go to trade school? I would have been very happy being a plumber, and I'm sure I would have been okay at it. I remember when I was a young professor, one of my colleagues said, well, he says, well, don't work with sports and athletes. There's no money in it. And yet, it's been a wonderful career to measure some of the best athletes of the world and really probe and dissect what is the root of their athleticism. And it's those understandings that have allowed me to apply it to the elderly. What is optimal movement? And how could we restore their ability to get off the toilet, put their bag overhead on a bus or in an airplane, so that they don't have to go into a patient care facility. They can stay living independently. So, these are athleticisms that I learned from elite athletes. I remember another person saying, well, don't write a book. It's just a terrible time sink. You can't make any money writing a book. Why would you even think about it? In any case, there's some examples of context specific advice that at the time, I'm glad I was an independent mind.
Yeah, it's a funny one in advice. Like
Yeah.
I think we should ask advice for people who are in that inner circle, the people who are around us quite closely. But we have to ignore and filter out any advice and any unwanted, unsolicited advice that's kind of thrown our way, which, with the internet is rather a lot. So yeah, I understand. But anyway,
Yeah.
what are the 3 words you would tell your younger self?
That's a really difficult one, Alex, because I think of the mistakes I've made, how I've mistreated people. But reflecting on all of those have made me who I am today. So how can I go back and give myself some advice that might have changed my behavior or my thoughts? Because then I'd be arriving at a different spot now. So, I wish I spoke more kindly to some people. I wish I thought about certain words. but you can't go back, and you just reflect on it. And every day you try and do a little bit better. I did hear an expression. In fact, it's in the foreword of my Ultimate Back Fitness book. Actually, it was a country music song. Yes. And it went something along the lines of, I'm just an old chunk of coal, but I'm going to be a diamond someday. And you just wake up every day and work a little bit harder to go in that direction, I suppose.
That's beautiful. It really is.
Well, it's not my poetry now. That was I who knows, maybe it was Dolly Parton or Merle Haggard or some of the real poets.
Whoever it was, they were speaking some truth.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Brother, thank you so much. This is an absolute honor and a privilege, honestly.
Well, myself included, Alex, keep writing, keep publishing, and I'm going to buy those books and pass them on a little bit. You've got a gift, and keep writing.
Thank you, sir. Like that's touched my heart. Thank you very much. There should be another one before Christmas. Fingers crossed.
All right,
So,
fantastic.
thank you, and
Okay,
I hope our paths cross soon in person. We can have a coffee. We can geek out about this fitness thing.
right on. Okay,
Thank you,
Alex,
sir.
stay well.
We'll
Stay
speak
well.
soon.
Bye bye.
Thank you,
Bye
sir.
bye.
Bye, everybody.